All right. So if you have any questions as I'm going through this lesson, please don't hesitate to either stop me with voice or type your questions in the chat. Either one is totally acceptable. So today we're going to talk about mining infrastructure and mining infrastructures like requirements and what goes into building a farm. As I've said before, this can be a very sort of big part of setting up mining in terms of like where do you find economical resources and all this kind of stuff, because well, mining in general is very expensive as a startup, right? So it requires a lot of capital in order to get moving. When we do mining, the whole purpose, just as a recap, right, we're trying to validate transactions on the blockchain, and we create new cryptos as a reward. So miners use specialized hardware like ASICs or graphics processing units, GPUs we call them, to solve complex math puzzles that verify legitimacy of transactions. That's what mining is in short, right? But once a miner solves the puzzle, they announce the solution to the network, and other nodes verify its accuracy. And if the solution is accepted, that miner is rewarded with a certain amount of crypto, and this process ensures that we have security, we have decentralization, while facilitating the creation and distribution of new coins, right? It's basically like a lottery, your miner tries to make as many guesses as possible in order to get the right answer, and if it has the right answer, other miners have to verify that, and they check out, yeah, we're good. So crypto mining requires substantial energy resources to power the computational process. So if we diverse energy, we can improve sustainability and help reduce environmental impact. I'm sure you guys have heard this term that proof of work is bad for the environment, right? Mining cryptocurrencies is bad for the environment. Well, it's only as bad as the source that you use. So that's really what it comes down to when I'm going to show you some of these resources that we can use. Traditional energy is stuff that we've had for a long time, right? Fossil fuels being the big one. I think that's no secret. We've been using oil to sort of power our generators for a while. We've also done things like coal and whatnot. But fossil fuels are non-renewable. Coal, oil, natural gas, they're associated with significant greenhouse gas emissions. They're very bad for the environment, right? We don't want to use fossil fuels. That's if we can help it. Unfortunately, a lot of what we have is already connected to so much of fossil fuels, but this is a very slow turning type of, how would you say, situation, right? We're still so very dependent on this kind of stuff for a lot of things. But grid electricity is from the power grid, which combines various energy sources. But a lot of regional electricity generation methods are from, let's say, like we said, fossil fuels. But we also have a couple of new ones, or not so new ones, that are using a little bit more renewable resources like hydro, wind, solar, and even nuclear. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. We also have renewable energy credits, where purchasing RECs allows mining facilities to support renewable energy generation without physically using it. So it enhances the sustainability profile of cryptocurrency mining operations. So essentially, as if you're operating on renewable energy, and you're not using all of it, you can actually donate some of that back to the grid so that you can actually earn a profit from that, right? And this is something that's a little bit more on the cherry on top of using renewable energy resources. Okay, so talking about renewable, this is what we definitely want, right? Because it incentivizes us as miners to make more of a profit from it, right? So if we have cheap electricity or renewable electricity, and we can power ourselves without having to draw from the main lines, then we can be more self-sustaining, and we don't have to worry so much about eating our profits just to pay the electricity bill. So some of these include like solar. That's a big one. So you need to harvest energy from the sun through photovoltaic panels suitable for regions with ample sunlight, but you also need a lot of real estate for it too. Right? You can't just operate off of one solar panel for one miner. You need many solar panels to operate for one miner, and so that's for some people the hardest part about solar. It's getting the real estate to use ample amount of solar. Wind power, on the other hand, is a little bit easier for those who live in, like the Great Plains of the United States. There's a lot of open air, so a lot of wind can pass through, and it's tall, right? Very, very, very tall. Still, wind allows with energy wind turbines to sort of create new electricity just by through the power of wind gushes and stuff like that, which is very, very environmentally friendly, which is we love wind power. Hydropower is also very good. You need to be, of course, by a dam, some sort of river, or that can at least have some sort of flowing capabilities. Which is why you see a lot of crypto mining projects looking for hydropower to work by a dam. Dams are very, very effective at this, and they usually generate more power than what is needed, which is amazing. So we can use up that excess power. But there is a little bit of a limitation sometimes too. It's only as powerful as the river or the dam that you're nearby. So we want to make sure that if we're using hydro, we've got a very good real resource of where we're getting our hydropower from, how much growth is there to that hydro facility. And then we also have geothermal here, which is tapping into the Earth's heat. This is very much like something that you would see in I don't know, like a Paraguay or like a Hawaii or something like that, where you're able to tap into volcanoes essentially. So any questions so far between traditional versus renewable sources, or any comments? Anybody want to add anything? All right, let's go and dive a little bit deeper into some of the other ones that I mentioned. We also have emerging energy sources like biomass. Biomass is pretty interesting. Utilizing organic materials like agricultural waste or dedicated energy crops, which offer renewable and potentially carbon neutral energy for mining. That's an interesting way of sort of getting new energy. We also have tidal power, which is similar to hydro powered energy, but not using necessarily like a dam. We're using the ocean waves and the tides. So as the ocean current comes in, it moves these sort of propellers that are harnessing and turning generators and stuff like that, which is very good for anything that's coastal. Still something that I don't think is mastered yet, but I think we're having a lot of really cool energy power plants using some sort of it. Other storage solutions like battery technology, very, very good for anybody who works in any sort of server or networking type of environment. You're probably familiar with the term uninterruptible power supply, right? Which is just a big battery that you put into your racks, and so if the power goes out, the battery kicks in, and it keeps them going. So with a mining farm, this is something that could be used, but the miners, they use a lot of power, so you got to get a pretty robust battery in order to be able to handle any sort of backups. But usually that would be the case just for more like intermittent changes, nothing to like shut down the mining farm for a very long time where it completely gets blown out, because if you have that, then you have a much bigger problem than just getting a battery. But if you're using something like you want to protect from surges or any dropouts in voltage, batteries are very good at that and regulating power. So it's one of those additional type of services that you can get out of something like that. All right, so I mentioned nuclear before as one of the more like traditional renewable type of resources. It's a little bit of a odd, sort of situation with nuclear, because there's a big dividing line about nuclear, and obviously it's because nuclear can be very, very dangerous, right? We've seen things like Chernobyl happen, and it's ruined that part of the earth for like 1,000 years or something, right? So, when we talk about nuclear, we got to be very, very, very cautious about nuclear. So it's derived from the process of splitting or combining atomic nuclei. And then we have this other type of energy source called hydrogen energy, which is interesting, which is derived from the combustion or fusion of hydrogen atoms. Now, nuclear energy is generated through these nuclear reactions like fission or fusion in power plants, whereas hydrogen energy is typically attained by extracting hydrogen from various sources like water or hydrocarbons and utilizing it as fuel. Now, the thing about hydrogen sort of energy is like it always needs another resource. It's like it's more of like of a transducing type of energy. It's not really like a creating a new type of energy. It has to always derive from something else, which is why we're still kind of in the process that hydrogen, while it's much greener than using or much safer than using something like nuclear, it's still there's still an amount of tremendous amount of resources that need to be used in order to even create hydrogen energy. So nuclear energy offers the advantage of producing large amounts of electricity with minimal greenhouse gas emissions, but its concerns of safety are still a big halt on a lot of these kinds of projects. Hydrogen energy, though, is valued for its potential as a clean and renewable source when providing sustainable methods. We're actually using hydrogen already in some industries, but it has not yet realized its full potential. Ambitious, targeted, and near-term action is still needed to further overcome barriers and reduce costs when it comes to that. So here's one that I've seen being used for several different types of mining operations, flare gas. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. Mining crypto with flare gas refers to the process of utilizing the excess or waste gas that is produced during oil extraction. So essentially, you're kind of taking what would have been a non-renewable energy source and taking what waste it would have created and trying to use that as energy. That's what flare gas does. So it's typically burned or released into the atmosphere as a byproduct of oil drilling or natural gas extraction, which contributes to environmental pollution. So it involves capturing and redirecting that gas to power mining equipment. So you reduce environmental impact. So it's actually a solution. It's a solution to us trying to do some fossil fuel refining. So all of that utilization for crypto mining can significantly reduce the harmful effects, and it's being transferred as energy that is profiting, right? You're mining Bitcoin with that. Energy efficiency also is essentially wasted energy. So harnessing it for mining operations, energy is put to productive use instead of waste, right? So this extraction that's happening with oil, if you're using flare gas from that line, you're actually getting a ton of cheap power because it's just like, hey, we were going to throw it away, so you're actually benefiting off of that. Any questions about flare? Or any other comments before I move on? All right.
These situations.
Sorry, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Would any of these situations, and I got in a little late, so I don't know if you covered this, but would any of these renewable energy options produce more than what we would be mining to be able to potentially also make profits on selling back energy?
So you're kind of chopping in and out, but I'm kind of getting a gist of, I think, what you're talking about. You're saying that if we're using, are we using more than what we can handle? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, well, are we going to be producing more energy than what
That
the miners will be needing, and therefore the energy could be sold back to the grid or whatever power companies or whatever? Is that potentially something
totally.
that's on the table, or okay?
That's totally an option, and I think it all depends on the the sort of the real estate of how much space you're encompassing, right? If you're going out to Texas, you got a whole lot of wind farms that can be used to to generate just electricity for your mining farm, but at the same time, you have sites where they'll have up to like 6 megawatts of power at their disposal, and they're only using maybe like 2.5 of that. So there's quite a bit of electricity generated that is going back to the grid as renewable energy sources and credited towards the person who owns that farm. But then other utilization allows that your mining farm, not only is it not using the total capacity, which is a good thing because that means there's room for growth, right? You can absolutely grow that farm and still have more power. So a lot of these renewable sources, there people try to go a lot bigger than what they initially need, just because they want to be able to have that room for growth. Great question. Any other questions? All right. Let's move forward and stop me again if you have any other. Oh, let's see here. Let me go back. I just missed this one here. Okay. So flare gas mining typically involves capturing the gas. So you have to capture at the source using some specialized equipment, which can include gas compressors, maybe some pipelines and storage tanks. Let's see here. Just want to make sure, guys, that when we are not asking a question, please to keep your stuff muted. So gas treatment is processed to remove impurities and ensure that it meets the requirements for efficient combustion of the mining equipment. That'll involve filtration, compression, other purifying processes that are involved in that, creating then power, which the purified gas is used to generate electricity. And then we have our mining operations. Okay, that's how we kind of break this down into just a couple simple steps. Oh, here we go. So hardware that you'll need for mining infrastructure is, well, you need a mining rig, that's for one. You'll need either ASICs or GPUs. That really is up to you whether or not you want to work with ASICs. I'm kind of more on the ASIC route, but a lot of people like to diversify and get a GPU. The only GPU thing that I'm mining is my personal computer when I mine Flux with that. But that's kind of like a little bit of a bonus to what I'm doing really with my own farm. ASICs are more efficient for cryptocurrencies, and if you really believe in a project, usually an ASIC that's associated with that project is nice to have because, well, you don't have to really worry about maintaining or not necessarily in maintenance, but like the difference between, let's say, someone who's operating a GPU farm versus an ASIC farm. GPUs require a lot more configuration, is what I meant to say. Power supply units. We need high quality power. We need stable power. We need the right sort of cables to work with. Go back to my mining basics, and we talk about calculating electricity for your mining farm, because that's very, very, very important, right? If we don't have good electrical sort of understanding of what's going on, we could easily set fire to some of our mining farms. So we want to make sure that we have the right power supplies. Okay, just a little reminder, right? You should only use a maximum of 80% of your power supply. Okay, don't ever go past that point. Then you're at risk of flammability. Okay, cooling systems. Mining generates a lot of heat. Okay, a lot of heat. So you'll need cooling solutions like fans, heat sinks. Some people want to go liquid cooling with immersion, which is what actually Xeno mining is doing, right? So we talked about immersion mining last week, and what are the details about that? Here we go. Let's see. Next page. Okay, software. So as far as the software goes, we need the operating system, which Windows, Linux, or some people work with Raspberry Pis for certain types of cryptocurrencies. Mining software and operating software. It all really depends on what you want, right? So if you're kind of like going the GPU route and you want to use your personal machine as part of a mining thing, you're probably using like a Windows. If you're going to be, getting a dedicated GPU rig, you're probably going to use Hive OS, with, like a Linux sort of build or something like that. It all depends, right? And typically some people would say, decentralized tools for decentralized money. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but, if you feel that you want to take that efficient route, that's totally cool too. Mining software like Luxor or Brains OS or CG Miner, these are the type of programs that are actually going to activate mining. I personally use Lowell Miner for my GPU, and then I'm using whatever I'm given from the ASIC manufacturer on their machines. I don't have anything customized to that regard. We also need internet connectivity, obviously, but more stable internet connectivity, the better. Always run with cables. Cables is the best. I know some mining farms that are in remote locations have to resort to things like Starlink, but they're always, complaining about problems of downtime and not getting a steady signal. So it's very important because your miner is going to be chugging whether or not it has a good connection or not. So if you're chugging away and you're getting rejected on your hash rate because it's not having a stable connection, you just wasted that energy for that hash rate. So you want to make sure that you're operating at very stable internet connections. Having redundancy is a big part of that, right? And don't just get one connection, get two, maybe three. Cryptocurrency wallets. Of course, we need to have our wallets to store what we mine. I highly recommend using a ledger or or a Trezor or something like that, just for hardware wallet cold, like long-term storage. In these cases, we don't want to necessarily keep anything that we're mining on a hot wallet that can be easily hacked. Mining pools also. If you choose to work with a mining pool, you're earning more sort of consistently than if you were to do solo. Some people like to do, let's say 95 or 99%. They'll work with a mining pool so that they got consistent, predictable revenue. Some people will then take that 1% or 5%, whatever you want to allocate, and they'll just contribute that to solo mining just for, any luck based in the future. Any questions before I move on? Ken, you mind with Nokia? Who knows? Maybe it's simple enough to operate Bitcoin code. And that's kind of like, I think, what I think about Doom. Every computer can run Doom, right? So funny. All right, let's keep going here. Security and maintenance. Oh, and by the way, wonderful destructions. Good to see you here, man, over from Walrus Anglers Club, right? So love it. Love seeing that. Security implementing. Okay, so security is very, very important because obviously, you got all these expensive pieces of gear. A miner, it's not out of the question to ask $10,000 for one machine. So you don't need anybody just walking up into your mining farm and just looking at it like, window shopping at Macy's, okay? We don't need to do that. So implementing security measures are very, very important for physical and cyber threats, okay? You might be in a very, very secure location, but if you don't have anything protecting you from the interwebs, then, you are just at risk, man, and could be even worse than just having a physical, threat. So we want to make sure we got firewalls, antivirus, secure network configurations, nothing that's going out into the open that anybody can just access remotely. Monitoring and maintenance in this case as well, we have to be very, very cautious as to how do we access, if we're going to be remote access, what are the secure channels on doing that, right? So you'll have to do a little bit of research as to what kind of security software you want to implement along with the physical security hardware that's going in, and also maintenance, right? When are you going to start cleaning the hardware? Because I don't know about you, but spring brings a lot of pollen, and pollen likes to get into everything. Okay, so you got to make sure that you're doing some regular maintenance and cleaning on that, so that pollen doesn't just stick to permanently onto your miners, etc., etc. Replacing faulty components. Yes, go ahead.
Using an indoor tent helps for that.
Yes, it can absolutely help. The only thing about indoor tents when you do mining operations is that there's a lot of heat reflectivity in these sort of like grow tents, which I've used personally. It's a little bit hard to get rid of that heat if you don't have the right gear for it. So what I did in my situation, because my tent was cooking at like 140 degrees Fahrenheit, it was like ridiculous. I couldn't hack it with the grow tent, so I had to go and build a shed outside and physically like make my own that was able to have a decent amount of intake. And it's not perfect, but it was a better solution for me in that regard. But it
Yeah,
takes some know-how to make and build and construct.
for sure. The temperature and controlling is huge. It was a constant fight all year round.
Yeah.
Constant adjustments, constant, um, moving things around. Yeah, just trying to figure out the best kind of airflow. I have internal. Uh, we have an internal like heat pump, air conditioner in our house, and so I was down in the basement. We're halfway under concrete in
Wow.
their basement, so I threw basically my entire tent and rig into a bedroom down in the basement. And during the summertime, uh, literally, like, you can't have that tent closed. I mean, it's wide open in the summer, and I was pulling air conditioning air in from my house, and basically, 8-inch induction fans sucking it out, the heat out
Wow.
from a window in the bedroom, and it, you know, you two 8-inch fucking meat fans, and I mean, they're humming, and yeah, I mean, I was glad I was in the basement, but yeah, it's a constant fight trying to deal with cooling and temperature for sure. I ended up buying like a 6 foot by 6 foot by 5 foot tent, I believe, grow tent,
Oh
like
wow.
a home roof kind of style
Mm-hmm.
looking tent. You can literally walk in it. I had two rigs in there, and like I said, I was just pulling air from the house and then sucking it out from inside the tent out. But during the summertime, man, that tent was fully open. The only thing that was closed on it was the roof because it was just a pain in the ass to take that part off of the tent. And
Right.
I just basically used that as an induction fan, like an induction unit, basically, kind of like
Yeah.
your butter range would be working over your stove, and use that as sort of like a suction. So I basically took, instead of the summertime, taking the inside air and trying to push it onto the machine, I was basically using the two fans and sucking both fans outside. So yeah, it was a constant battle of trying to figure out what would work best. But yeah, I'm over here on the west coast of Canada, so I mean it's usually pretty wet over here, and we get about 230 days a year of rain. So for me, my issue being around salt and salt water and stuff, I was
Oh
really
yeah.
trying to worry about the salt corrosion and
Yep.
stuff like that in our air. So I actually got a purifier for in the room, and that actually helped quite a bit.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally empathize. I had maybe like 4 to 5 different iterations of my mining farm in different configurations before I found and settled on doing this thing outside. And it's amazing how when you're trying to do things indoors, it's actually more complicated because you don't have the liberty of really customizing the space entirely, especially if it's a shared space, right? Which mine's was. So you have certain limitations, and you can't go and just build like an entire HVAC unit that's dedicated to this shit inside your home. So I empathize.
I literally had to pull 3 plugs, like 220 plugs, power plugs, from
Yeah.
my garage into that room, and
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I can't emphasize enough about what we're doing. Like, this is fractional mining. Like, holy shit. Like, this is exactly what we've all been looking for. I'll be honest, getting into the mining
Oh
industry
yeah.
because it's like, you know, I've been there, you've been there. You know, it's not an easy task. You're constantly looking at charts and your values and all of the key monitors and I was always in that tent. I was always in that tent. My wife would be like, "Oh, where's he tonight? Oh, I know where he is. He's in the basement tent." Like,
Yes. No. I've said it before in a previous class, but my mining operation almost had me break up with my girlfriend because it was just insane how much attention I had to devote to just keeping everything operational. And then, she's like, you're spending so much electricity, and she's like hearing it every day, and she's like, I'm going crazy, I can't have a thought to myself. And I'm like, but I'm printing money, and she's like, she doesn't get it. So yeah, yeah, it's very difficult.
right now because I was in this exact same boat.
Salute. This is how we do in the mining world. But that's why, again, right, we talk about mining infrastructure and stuff like this for a lot of you guys, because we want you to understand that mining with something like Xeno is a very unique thing. Okay, there's not a lot of projects that do what things like Xeno do, right? I actually can count how many mining projects I think are actually worthwhile, and it's probably less than 10. So you want to be very, very, considerate that this is a very big part of the revolution of mining. Like we're taking mining even more global than it was before. Okay, people are like, oh my God, is there going to be a limit to the mining? And it's like, no, I don't think there will be at all. I think we're going to have more adoption because we have stuff like NFTs and stuff that can help us, earn these rewards on passively without having to own it ourselves. We can all work together to pool together and make a mining farm somewhere out remote and just benefit from that, right? That's kind of the idea. So, but if you're going to be the part of the decentralization of this, right? And you want to do it yourself, right? Mining infrastructure, regulatory compliance, like you see over here. We got to think about that stuff. It's not just hey, just put it up and see where it goes. Especially if you want to build it at scale. You can't just plop a mining farm that is going to host 200 miners anywhere. You gotta make sure you follow through compliance and all that stuff so that you have future proofing your your whole entire setup. But let's kind of get back on track here and talk a little more about security for your mining farm. Part of that is just location, right? You don't want to, choose just places just for cheap electricity. You want to also make sure that that cheap electricity that you're earning is going to be in a safe space too. That we don't want to put our miners at risk of being stolen just because we want that cheap electricity. So limiting access also. Who's going to be able to enter the premise? Are you going to use key cards, biometric scanners? Are you just going to use, a regular, lock that you put on your garage door? What are you going to use? Depends on the scale of your entire operating systems, right? I hear the question.
Personal farms too.
Yes, absolutely.
Personal farms too. Like, don't be telling all your buddies that you have racks of GPUs in your basement.
Yep. Yep. Usually, you wanna limit the amount of information that you put out in the public. Now, for instances like this, like we're all here trying to learn about mining, so I don't mind talking about that. I have my own mining farm, but I also don't boast about how many miners I have either, right? So everything with a little bit of forethought. Always forethought. Don't get too crazy and too excited about that. Some people are looking at you like victims or as prey in some instances. Secure your equipment too. I don't know if you're into things like Kensington locks or stuff like that, or whatever you got to do. If you got to build a cage within a cage to get it to be staying secure, just always think about how people might try to infiltrate and access your equipment. Okay, tampering and unauthorized access is an absolute no-no. As far as network, yeah,
I had security cameras all over the place in my house after I've been with that.
yep,
So,
yep. And I recommend absolutely, if it's a personal mining farm, you can use things like I don't know, like Simply Safe, or Nest, or you want a custom surveillance network that you can record constantly on your own servers. That's cool too. But yeah, absolutely, nothing without at least some sort of security monitoring. I absolutely recommend that too. You want to get AT&T, whatever. Um, but networking is just as important. Okay, so firewall protection, absolutely imperative. In my own personal setup, I'm using the layer 7-layer firewall on my entire network. I don't want anybody getting through. Intrusion detection and prevention systems, deploying IDPS to monitor network traffic. You can detect suspicious activities. You can kind of say, like, I use in my personal computing, I use Kaspersky. I like Kaspersky because I also get to see activity monitoring through the same software, and allows me to see, and it tells me every time something new connects to my network. It will tell me, hey, someone or something just connected to your network. Do you approve of this? And I can cancel it immediately if it's very fishy. Virtual private networks, also very cool. Someone who's a little bit more savvy technically can make something like this to encrypt network communications. So you can have like a channel based through your remote work, and seeing your entire mining farm, to say, hey, okay, this is a custom network channel that I can just get to my information very, very quickly and efficiently. Using Linux is also very good. Yep. Windows and stuff like that is easily hackable. We've seen that for many, many years with Windows. And then Macintosh. Well, what about Mac? Well, because Mac doesn't really operate for mining at all. That's not what they built Macs for. So they built Macs better for like creative, programs and stuff like that. Not necessarily for IT tech work like we do here. Apple is great for tax purposes. There you go. Yeah. Regular software updates, keeping your mining software, firmware, operating systems up to date with latest security patches to mitigate vulnerabilities. Absolute important thing to do. Always keep your stuff up to date. All right, some data security tips, okay? Strong passwords, right? If you're going to access your miners, probably a good idea that your mining passwords are not the same as your personal passwords, and, whatever, vice versa. You just want to make sure you have some sort of multi-factor authentication whenever possible, right? You may even have like a VPN, and then all of this stuff with having your, multi-factor to, authentication. You might go through Tor, communication channels in order to get through all of this, right? Some people really go all the way on doing that. So you have no access to finding where their mining farm is. Very, very, very cool security measures. Encryption, sensitive data, wallets and mining configurations, protecting from unauthorized access, right? Also, of course, backing up. Do you have your seed phrases okay, backed up somewhere, written down, not on the internet? In this case, if you're going to use like a ledger or something like that for the long haul, hey man, get it written in steel so that it's fireproof or something. Like that stuff is out there that you can do. Secure wallet management also, of course. Some people have dedicated laptops that don't access the internet when they're working with their mining farms, so that they don't have any risk of possible infiltration, right? So there's a great, I think it's I don't know if it's called Pure or it's called Prism. It's a very, very, very cool laptop company where it's all about security first. You have like kill switches for cameras and Wi-Fi and all this kind of stuff. It's very, very, very focused on security first, and then everything else later. It's Linux based, but I'll find it and I'll post a link to it. It's very, very, very interesting. Monitoring and surveillance. Security cameras. Install surveillance cameras strategically to monitor critical areas and record any suspicious activities. We just talked about this. Wake mentioned that. Environmental monitoring. This could be one too. Maybe you're not thinking about this, right? Hey, what if there's a flood, right? You want to be able to know immediately by a sensor, right? Or how about fire sensors, right? Something's starting to smoke. It's getting too hot, whatever. Fire sensors are very good. It's things that can respond automatically to environmental disasters, okay? Also, network monitoring. How do you track your network traffic, detect anomalies, identify potential security breaches? These are all tools that you can use. Highly recommend looking into something like Deeper Network if you're not very tech savvy. Deeper Network is something I've been using for several months now, and their product is actually really great. On the side, you can earn crypto with it, which is pretty awesome as a VPN provider. Any questions before I move on? Alrighty then. Let's see here. Staff awareness. Okay, yeah, so if you're having a big mining farm operation happening and you need to hire some staff to help, mitigate and maintain, you're going to want to make sure that you're hiring people that you can trust, of course, but also giving not just, trusted people the keys, but also informing them how to go about keeping security, okay? We can't just assume that people will know how to be secure, right? You got to say, okay, when we're talking about, hey, that you work at a mining farm, maybe don't give them, information on how to access the mining farm, okay? That's probably not a good idea. So, security best practices, including password hygiene, right? Social engineering awareness, recognizing phishing attempts. If people know that you're into something like this, people want it. Not your keys, not your crypto, right? We know, we say that for a reason, okay? Because everybody's out there to get your crypto. Access controls, implementing role-based access controls to restrict privileges that ensure employees only have access necessary to the resources for their job, right? We don't want to just have everybody walk everywhere, right? It's kind of like, you got your administrators, you got your moderators, you got your recruits, all that good stuff. But we want to make sure that everybody has a specified kind of access so that you have, security. Okay, that's what this is all about. Incident response plan. If somebody encounters an incident, how do they address it promptly so that you have every piece of information to tackle that? This is a little bit more complex, right? We're talking at a bigger scale, so you need to approach your staff with an organized plan on how to tackle this stuff. Okay, and then finally, let's summarize what we've learned today. Renewable energy crypto mining utilizes environmentally sustaining sources of power, right? We've gone over the different kinds that are out there, like solar, wind, hydroelectric, etc. To support these, computations required to mine. But by harnessing these new renewable sources, mining operations aim to minimize their carbon footprint and reduce their reliance on fossil fuels. There's the incentive of being able to earn more out of your profit margins, right? Cheaper electricity, more profit. This approach combines the centralized and secure nature of crypto with the goal of promoting sustainability and combating climate change. So, as a matter of fact, right, proof of work in the most regard for the environment, it's actually the most for it, if you think about it. Proof of work is the thing that's actually, I think, going to help push to do more environmentally friendly energy all across the board. Because let's go back to the conversation of, hey, are we going to use up all the energy that we're going to have at our disposal? No, maybe not, actually, right? We're building beyond the scopes of what we actually have at the current moment for the potential of future growth. But where's that energy going to be going right now? It's going to go to the grid. It's going to go to the households that are in the towns nearby. It's going to go to all the cities across the nations, right? So actually, we're adding to the green revolution in this case, okay? Because people want to make money, but they also want to make, the world a little bit of a better place while they do it. I like to say environmentally green mining makes us all financially green investors, right? So that's kind of a little tag at the end that I wanted to put over here. But it's really important that when we are in a conversation with somebody, they're like, oh, proof of work, oh, mining, isn't that like bad for the environment? And it's like, dude, man, it's actually better than you think. And yeah, right now maybe we're not 100% there, but that's not necessarily our fault. The energy resources that are available to us right now are just a consequence, a byproduct of what's been there in the past. So, you tell me, we're actually building new farms, new power. And when we build the new stuff, we're not going fossil fuel. We're going renewable. So anyway, that's kind of my spiel about it on there. We got a couple of comments here. Poorer regions use proof of work to use excess waste renewable energy to use, consequently driving energy prices down. Yeah, that's very true. Wake. My neighbors thought I was growing in the basement, so I got quiet fans. Yeah, I definitely had some funny looks too. Some of my neighbors were like, so what are you doing over there? You got like all this exhaust coming out? And I'm like, it's, I said I'm operating servers. I got a whole server that I need to cool down. And they're like, oh, okay. Oh, man. Your neighbors know what's up. I was very, very discreet when I had to go out and do all that stuff. I did it one at a time. Did not do it all at once. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's gonna stick. That'll stick out like a sore thumb. Yeah. Oh man, and that's actually another thing I should mention, because like some of us, we live in gated communities and stuff like that, and you gotta listen to your HOA, right? So got to make sure you're not violating any of their rules and stuff like that. That's a little bit more difficult to handle than if you're in a place that's not gated. But then it's not as secure as maybe a gated community. So that's kind of a give and take scenario there. You gotta think about that. Anyway, this has been great. Are there any other questions, or anybody want to contribute any comments, or maybe share their experience about mining or trying to build mining infrastructure?